are gonna have to test for. So the logic vulnerabilities, I always keep them in the back of my mind, and I keep in the back of my mind RTFM. Read the freaking manual and read any manual that I can find, because even though I might not find a manual directly on this page, or there might not be a manual that is in scope even, but any public document is in scope. So you can go looking for manuals on Google, for example, as well. A stupid example is a while ago I was testing, and the manuals that you cannot deactivate super admin users. So of course I tried that, and that's the easiest 125 euros that I've ever made. So it's important that you try at least if the manual tells you to not do something, that you at least give it a shot. Now, of course, there's also a cool thing about this right here. You can see that one of these guys is administrator, but there seems to be no real way of changing this. So I'm gonna have to look into that later as well, because if I can change user settings, then of course I can change people to administrator as well. Now, quickly going to go over what I have right here already, which are the requests that I've been making. And here in my target, you can see that a lot of labs are also popping up. They're not really in scope, of course. We're gonna focus on these labs right here, or these items. Now, it's what I can do as well real quickly is I can right click on this node item, and from here I can discover content. Then it starts from the red side location. I'm gonna do that real quickly because there are some things that I need to show you guys. So this content discovery can go away for now, and this one can take its place. So then you've also seen the content discovery, very useful. Now that last request that I've made, the post to the users, as you can see right here, it's a little bit small maybe, but I can't really enlarge it. So it says write name and then can edit invoices, the user ID 15 with the value on, and that can be on or off. Now I can see that is admin here, so I can try a few things as well. After I send this to the repeater, I can say, and by the way, that shortcut is Control R, or the Mac key and R. And then I can say is admin, for example, and I can try that as well on that user number 15. Now that user number 15, let's see, let's just make that user number this one, so we are sure that we are not changing somebody who is already administrator. There we go. Okay, so that was user 15. Then we can just continue. Now what I see here is that I have written it as is admin, but I can also write it as like this, camel case, because all of the other ones were camel case as well. And you will see that after writing it camel case, it will actually have assigned that value, and that is what we call mass assignment. It's in the OWASP top 10, and it basically means you have an object with assigned properties which have been too exposed, so massively assigned those object properties. Those are things you should definitely test for, and even if they're never in the request at all, you should investigate the response for things that are not in the request, and you should try to trigger those things and see if you can change them. And another example I can give is account type. I was testing a target, and I was testing account type was interchangeable, like you guys saw right here. And that might not seem like a problem at first until you realize that if you go to their website and you look up the price for account A, that's about $500 per year, and the price for account B was 50K per year. So that's a fact that's a big factor. Changing that account type was definitely not the intended behavior there. That's important to realize. So that's a little bit from that side. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up authorize because I'm going to test for broken access control if I know my application well enough. And the first thing I do is already a bingo because I copy that users.php URL. And as you can see, I can look at the users even if they are not logged in. So that's a big problem. Now, what I can do is and this, by the way, this is very granular design for my access control module or my authorization module. But what you will often see is account types. And if you have a school system and you have the professor and the manager and the student, then you will have to test with all of those different accounts if they can execute administrative functions, for example, while they should not. Um, so that's something that I wanted to demonstrate real quick, but I wanted to demonstrate also because I'm not logged in and I use authorize a lot, which is a free extension in Burp Suite. And with authorize, what I can easily do is fetch cookies header from my last request. And this is now the low privileged user's cookie basically. So I don't have to fill this in anymore manually. If it's not a little bit iffy, you can always go to your proxy. And I logged in as this user, and it should, in theory, let's see real quick, it should return my cookie. There we go. So set cookie.
Uncle, can we make these fonts a little bigger
I
so that
tried,
there's
but do you know
uh,
how?
yeah, actually go in users option.
There we go. And then,
Okay, so in the display,
yes, of course, font size.
yeah,
Let's make it 20. That should be a lot more readable. Whoa, that might, yeah, it's okay, like that, 17. There we go. Thanks a lot for that, my friend. Really appreciate
yeah,
it.
that's okay, that's okay.
So in the what I was saying in here, it made every font bigger except for the request and the response.
Okay, there's
That's
actually option to make the content bigger as well. So
I
users
was
option.
I was like that is a very
We have to change HTTP message display and change font.
to 17
Yeah,
as
make this
well.
bigger.
Excellent. Thank you very much, my friend. Really appreciate it. Um, so, as I was saying, the cookie is set, and I could, in theory, just copy that cookie, but I am lazy and I like to just click a button. That's easier for me. And then the moment I start testing, I put authorize on. I go to the high privileged user. I don't need this low privileged user anymore. I go to the high privileged user and I click on things that I'm not supposed to see. Now, a lot of other things are also going to come along, like this Google Tag Manager, which is for my analytics, for example. I can add a filter to only include scope items in my requests, and that's going to make it a lot easier already because then I'm not gonna see all of this stuff here. Now, this is something that I'm going to have to investigate because what authorize will do is it will send the same request you just did by clicking, but it will replace the session cookie. So it will repeat the same request you did as a low privileged user. Then it's gonna take response A and response B and compare them. If they are very similar, you will see an orange is enforced here. If they are exactly the same, you will see that red bypassed. And you always have to look into that, but be careful. Configuration files, home pages, they are all supposed to be public. So if I click on my home page right here, I will also see bypassed, but they are supposed to be public, those home pages. So I don't want that in there. I can say URL not contains, for example, index.php as filter. There we go. Now I'm not gonna see that anymore while clicking around. Then I can clear everything again and I can start fresh. And then I can see if there's things that I'm able to do which I should not be able to do. And as you will see immediately, there's quite a lot of things that will pop up red. Now this website, red site, is a website which we can change the active vulnerabilities on. So the vulnerabilities that are active today might not be active tomorrow when you are testing. Um, so I can actually edit the orders as well. And I have to, this is the boring part, and this is why a lot of hunters and bug bounty hunters and pen testers don't do a very good job when it comes to broken access control, is you have to test every single user level and you have to test every single user item as well. That's going to take quite a while because you're testing broken access control, but you're also maybe testing IDORs if your application is a little bit bigger. And if your application is even bigger than that, and it allows for you to create a organization, for example, Google and Yahoo, but they also have divisions like Google Ireland and Google Belgium, and then you have Yahoo Ireland and Yahoo Belgium. And then you can create employees between from those companies. And then you're already 3 levels deep, but you can test for IDORs between the organizations Google and Yahoo. You can test for IDORs between Google Ireland and Google Belgium. You can test for IDORs between the users themselves. So as you can see, it can get quite complex quite quickly. Always have a notebook handy so you can write these things down. It will help you a lot. At least that's for me, because if I have to make beautiful notes while I am testing, my notes will not be beautiful anymore. So that's it for broken access control, IDORs. I can test a lot for it using, of course, authorize, but I can also, of course, just copy and paste URLs. And what I can also do in some instances, but in this instance it's not as applicable, but I might be able to go to my developer console right here, and I might be able to create a, or at least execute. By the way, this is definitely not cross-site scripting. This is just an example, but I might be able to execute a function right here like show invoices or invoice, which takes an identifier, and that might give me a pop-up as well. So I can test for IDORs with the URLs. I can test for IDORs with the developer console. I can test for IDORs with authorize. I can test for IDORs with manually repeating my request. So I can just go to target. Let me close this down real quick again, and I can repeat the request myself. And in that I can change the authorization headers that are being sent along, if there are any, of course. In this case, this is because I am not logged in and I am still sending the request, so there are no session cookies. But I can replace those manually. That's also a possibility. And remember, now you can double click your tabs and you can actually name them. That is useful if you're testing. Take your time to do this. If you're gonna reuse that tab later, if you're not gonna reuse that tab later, take your time to close it down as well. So that's also a possibility. Now, what you can test for as well is changing the request method. So you can right click and change request method. Sometimes there might be an IDOR on the get, but sorry, this on the, not on the post, but on the get. And you always have to test for these types of things while you're testing for IDOR and broken access control. Now I'm quickly gonna take my notebook, which is Notion, and in there I have a guide for which I test for IDORs as well, at least the things I test for. And I'm gonna quickly see if I didn't skip anything, because of course my memory is getting a little shoddy. Uncle Red is getting a little bit old, my friends. Which is not true, by the way. So you also have to take into account that IDORs happen on the normal IDs that you might be used to, but they might also happen on UUIDs, like those strange long strings of characters that we all know. They might also happen there, and while that is much less impactful, you can still create a lot of impact there if you can find an endpoint which will list all of those UUIDs. Very important. I talk a lot about primary IDORs right now. What I've been talking about exclusively are primary IDORs, which means I trigger them. Broken access control, same thing. I trigger them directly. But I might also get the system to do it for me. Like, for example, I might not be able to see the invoices, but I might be able to print documents and I might be able to send the document identifier of an invoice. And bam, suddenly I can see invoices. So there's a lot of, it's a lot more complex than a lot of people realize, but there's also a lot of things that can come from this. I usually spend a lot of time testing these types of things if that's possible, because I think, and especially for public-facing companies, that broken access control, if it's the wrong function, it can be very, very fatal. Business logic, same thing. And for like, I test, uh, let's say if I test for a full week, I will test for at least a day on this. Now, I will also just investigate all of the single requests that have come in with all of their parameters, and I can make it easier for myself by only showing parameterized requests. That will make it a lot easier already, and I can investigate them and I can see if I can change anything which might be positive for me. Like, I might be able to change the invoice identifier if I have to. If there's some front-end protection, like on here on the number, I might be able to change that to a string. So, or there might be some front-end protection where I can't enter negative values, for example, right here, but I can still try that right here in my request itself. So Burp Suite definitely useful for me. It has helped me a whole lot. I think that's about it for Burp Suite. What I use mostly, also Intruder sometimes, but I'm not gonna use Intruder right now. Then I also, because of course I don't want to kill my own server, then I have OWASP Zap as well, which I use quite often, and OWASP Zap is a different kind of concept because it starts up in a server slash database configuration, whereas Burp Suite will start up in a file configuration. That matters because I can easily set up Burp Suite on a remote server, and then I can, OWASP Zap on a remote server, and I can control it from my own computer because it functions as a server. Now, as you can see here, you have a few modes in which you can use OWASP Zap. We'll use the standard mode for now, and we'll click on manual exploration, because if I go to expert.com, the website, expert.com/website, and I open it up. So, I launch my browser. You will see that I am opening up a OWASP hub as well, a Zap hub. And that's a really interesting part of OWASP Zap for me, is those little things which will come here at the side in a moment. There we go. As you can see, it talks about the vulnerabilities which exist within that website, and it also gives you a lot of options. I haven't set any scope yet. You guys have seen that, but I can from here at the current domain to scope, and I won't have to set up anything. I can just bam, go, and don't have to worry too much. That's why I like SAP as well. So you can also put this break thing on. We'll have to investigate what that does a little bit more. And then you can see some of the alerts which have popped up, like the medium alerts, for example. Okay, X frame options header not set. You can immediately see what vulnerabilities are on what page, which is very, very useful, especially the on which page part. Then on the right you have the site tree, which is very useful because I can directly click on my site tree from here. Super, super useful, and investigate and click through, of course, as well. And I can start a spider which does exactly the same as the OWASP content discovery. But this is a spider, so it will follow links, and it's not really a, oh, I'm gonna try to brute force it, but still very useful nonetheless. Also, Ajax Spider, we will look at the brute forcing later on, by the way. And then we can start an active scan from our location. Now this is automatic scanning and is completely free, which is very, very fine and dandy if you ask me. Thank you very much, OWASP developers, if you're watching. And so it's gonna do its automatic scan now, and I'm not going to worry too much about it. And I'm just gonna click around like I would again normally do with my Burp Suite open. I keep mixing those two up. Now in SAP as well, you can also start the the automatic scan from here. Very useful, but this is all contextual menus, which means that they will show you what they think is important at the moment. For example, the spider and the active scan, because I was working on those. Now I can add items to the menu myself. I don't have to I don't have to rely on Zap to do it for me, but I can because Zap is very good at doing that in my opinion. I can, if for example, attack and start the fuzzer from here. All of my values can be filled in very easily. And then I just have to select the value, add that as a payload, and then I can add different payloads which I want to test for. Burp Suite has these built in quite a lot, and Zap doesn't, but you can find them online. When it says do maximum 5 requests per second, scanning threads per scan or that's not requests per second. Very important to realize that. If they say like 5 requests per second, put this as low as possible. And maybe put in a delay while fuzzing as well if it's still going over that limit. So that's it for OWASP Zap for you. You can do a lot of things again from here. Also, again, access control testing, but it's a lot easier to do it just from the right clicking menus, or at least the items that you need. You can port scan your host with OWASP Zap as well, and then I can enter the repeater, and in here I can change values like I'm used to. I can change my method if I would like to. It's not automatically if I change it from put to post, at least I don't think. Let's create a body and let's enter a really simple value. Let's just do it like this. And now let's say we make a get from it. Enable to change the method. Yep, okay, that's really good. So if I go and I send this to the repeater and I say question mark ID equals 1, for example, I can change that to a post request and it will send the ID to the body. That's perfect. That's what I was looking for. So we've all been looking at this website, but we've all been staring us blind at something we didn't find yet, which is upload images.php. And upload images.php, as you can see, is sort of a gallery of all broken images, some of them causing cross-site scripting, some of them not, but it's a mishmash of different items right here, and I'm gonna have to clean that folder out, I see, because it gets a little bit big. People, how much, it's insane, like how much images can you upload? No, that's definitely not all the images. Let's refresh there, Mr. Salvador. Anyway, another tool that I will also use, because sometimes I will be forced to do API testing, and I'm sorry about deleting all your files, guys. I need to make some room. But API testing, I usually like to use Postman for that. Postman is a great tool, and it basically, why is it a great tool? Because of the software development lifecycle these days and agile. Now, the people who will have worked in companies with big tech will have already known what I'm talking about. Release cycles. Those release cycles are every 2 weeks, so I like to run my scripts every 2 weeks. I am not the kind of person who will only test their target once and bug bounties. When it comes to pen testing, I can group all of my requests in one collection, and I can give that collection to my client as well. So I really like Postman. Now I will just add the different API requests to a collection, and in Postman you actually have an environment that is linked to the environment variables. Can be things like URL, for example. That's one of the things, but you also have, if I load global variables. Now, those global variables, as the name says it, they span multiple different environments. So, that's it basically. What's really cool about Postman is I can set up monitors, and every so often I can basically make some requests. There's also flows in here. It used to be that Postman was dumb and could only send requests in the order that you created them. Now you can actually build some logic into it as well. So in Postman, as you can see, you can make a very simple request by selecting the method, that the URL that it needs to go to, and then the body in here. It can also be parameters, which will be your URL parameters then. And that's about it for that tool. So we've had a burp suite, we've had the website exploration, Zap, Postman, and developer tools. Now, what I want to move on to is more broad in terms of I want to do broad scope investigation as well. And I'm just gonna use a website called vrt.be for this. They have a bug bounty program on integrity. And the first thing I'm gonna do is, because they have a massive scope, is I'm going to mass enum minus d for domain vrt.be. There we go. And I'm going to investigate and find the different subdomains. That's gonna be my first thing. Then I'm going to port scan those, and then after port scan, first HTTP probe to see if they are live, and then I'm going to port scan them with first is mass scan, which can only scan the ports that you tell it, and it's a lot faster, but it cannot go as granular. And then I like to feed it to Nmap to specifically test the ports that are open for banner enumeration and scripting. And then Nuclei is a tool that I use for all of my vulnerabilities. Now, how do I use that for all of my broad scope? I mean, how I use that is I have a database, and whenever I write a new Nuclei template, um, my entire database of subdomains will get scanned with my new nuclear template. And whenever I find a new subdomain, I will add it to my little list, and I will also scan that different subdomain with all of my existing um, templates there. Then I will also do subdomain flyover, because I'm really interested and I want to see what I'm actually working with. I don't want to breeze through it, that's very important for me. And then I can also do something like this, some Google dorking. So right now I investigate the main application as well, of course. A lot of people seem to skip investigation of the main application, but since we're hacking, the more we know, the better. And then I come to websites like this, for example. This is a language website. That's not very interesting to me. So I've investigated that and I will move on from that website. There we go. Now I come into communication.vrt.be. Again, investigate, scrap it from the list, move on. This is what I call a manual broad scope methodology, and it is a lot more useful than running tool after tool after tool and not really knowing what it does either. Now, there's also some, besides the Google dorking, is there's a GitHub dorking that you can do. There's lists of GitHub dorks, which are really, really useful. And I have on my GitHub as well a checklists page in which you can see this multi-target recon as well. And again, I will put that in the Discord. So there we go, friends. There's other checklists in there as well, such the main app methodology for bug bounties, hunting checklist also for bug bounties. I need to massively expand this checklist. An FAQ because I've gotten a lot of questions like, hey, what are burp collaborator alternatives? Because that's not free if you want the private version. Well, here you go. I find a website that uses a vulnerable version of jQuery, blah, blah, blah. How is that exploited? So if you're interested in that, please have a look. If you're not, that's also fine. Might also be interested for some of you to look at the OSINT file in here, in which I basically, this is very basic stuff for OSINT. So if you have anything to add to that, I would love to hear it. Then there's the WAF bypass checklist. That is basically this checklist is largely coming from OWASP and some other checklists that I found online. And then this web application security checklist. This might be a lot more interesting. There's a lot more in here. And for myself, I have all of this in my Notion notebook, and I do take the time to make better notes from my written notes, of course, but I do it after I'm done hacking, because when I'm hacking, I'm just too confused and I'm way too busy doing too much work, and I just want to move forward, move forward, move forward. So that's why the speed of writing things down really helps me. So we've had this, and then of course there's also Docker for hackers. I don't know how many you guys have heard about Docker, but Docker is basically a containerization mechanism. And what we mean by that is you might want to ship your application to the client, but you don't want to ship a complete Linux distribution with it every time, or you don't want to have a distribution that doesn't have the required includes anymore. That's where Docker can help very easily, because you can complete something that looks like a VM but isn't a VM. It's a container, like I said. It can be very lightweight and contain literally only the things that you need for it to run. It doesn't have to contain anything else. It doesn't have to contain anything operating system related. And what you can easily do is I start Docker for desktop, and you can very easily download that. And then you can look up things like Docker pen testing images, for example. And you can there we go. This one, for example, this Docker image might be useful. You can basically run all of your Linux tools on a Windows machine, on a Mac machine. You can run all of the Mac machine tools on a Windows machine if you would like. I think, I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, as you can see, all of these tools without having to do anything except for just starting and pulling and starting this image. That's not very shabby in my opinion. Now, that's it what I wanted to tell you guys today. I would love to come back if that's okay with you. I really enjoyed our talk. For the guys on YouTube and the gals, thank you so much for being there. And I will see you in the next one.